Hello, welcome to Graphic Policy Radio. This is your host, Elon 11, and this is a genre science fiction television podcast this week. This is a podcast for people who are excited about queer post-human space operas with a sense of humor and a big bone to pick with corporations. That's right, it's time to talk about Murderbot Season 1. Joining me today is my frequent co-collaborator and co-conspirator and co-host, Sarah Daniel Rasher, is a fan of fine quality science fiction entertainment, who you'll know from the Graphic Policy Radio Star Trek podcast, Deep Space Dive podcast. So I'm sure you've heard us talk before when we've covered Deep Space Nine. And today we're going to be talking about a series that I think will appeal to a lot of fans of DS9. But also some people who don't. And that show is Murderbot, which we both have been watching on Apple TV. Sarah, do you want to talk about the show?
Yeah, the show wrapped up its first season on Apple TV, and right before the season finale, Apple announced that it is being renewed for season 2, whether Murderbot likes it or not. It is based on a series of books known as the Murderbot Diaries by Martha Wells. And the first season is based on, but takes a lot of fun and well justified as well as some questionable liberties with the first novel in that series, which is called All Systems Red. Um, just the combination of queer space opera, the fact that it's funny, and the fact that it is, to a surprising extent for something produced by Paramount and aired by Apple, quite anti-corporate. Like,
Mm-hmm.
this seems not only like a show that is made for both of us, but a show that we thought would really appeal to a lot of graphic policy.
I do want to give people sort of an orientation to the show so they can make a spoiler-free orientation to the show so they can make an informed choice about watching it or not. And then after that, we are going to go into, we'll mark it very clearly when we shift to a spoiler filled for the full season of the series. I have not read the books. I've only seen the show. The books sound fabulous, but I actually kind of like the dynamic where we have Sarah, who's read all the books, and me, who has read zero. Perhaps we'll be more similar to the audience's experience in this too. Like, the core story of Murderbot is about a constructed robot person.
Cyborg,
And
it has human components.
yes, and it's that character's story amongst a group of human scientists that are from a very different society and world than its own. Murderbot's pronouns are it/its, and so it's a bit of a fish out of water for both sides of the equation, for both Murderbot itself and for the scientists on now exploring a dangerous planet with Murderbot by their side. Um, I think what got me interested in watching it was having so many friends tell me that it would be for me. It's a really funny, entertaining, creative, and original science fiction show. The world building is intriguing. I don't feel like any of it is a retread of media that I've seen before. Even when it is doing genre critique, it isn't just doing it to be postmodern. It's doing it because it's about the real world. It's also a lot of fun. It's genuinely funny, and the cast is wonderful. Just so many engaging, compelling, diverse, interesting queer characters, and like in a world where queerness is normal, which is a nice place to be right now. Um, yeah, like, what are some of your other top line thoughts for why people should check out the series if they have not yet?
So I started reading the books in 2021, which is actually a few years after the first one came out. So I got to binge like the first 4 of them and then read the rest
Mm.
of them as they've been released. Um, and I was originally pitched the books, and all of this also applies to the TV, as just like the book world is now kind of lousy with queer space opera, but this is one where it feels so organic to the character, where there's a character that is different than anyone else you have met before and has just this really strong voice and is just it's the kind of thing where if you want to just like really latch on to characters within genre fiction, like this is going to be your jam. It's like 20-25 minute episodes, so it is very very brisk. um like it's like a low time load, and like it's great ADHD TV. It's just in that it's just really engaging and kind of nonstop, but not in a way that's exhausting, in a way that's just sort of like justifying your attention. I feel like the performances are really strong. I feel like it's the rare genre TV show with a lot of effects, where the effects look like the budget that was put into it, and where the effects are chosen really thoughtfully. Um, it's just, and it's also like if you are the kind of person who listens to graphic policy radio um, because you are interested in the intersection of politics and comics and and science fiction and fantasy, like you will be really satisfied with what both the show and the books do.
Yep. Also, it's very fast paced. It's amazing how much they can fit in a short little episode. So it fits itself into your schedule very nicely.
Yeah, it's really, really packed tight. And it acknowledges that like humans have romantic and emotional relationships, but it's not like gonna surprise you with romance plot lines. And in fact, Murderbot would be very mad if it did that. Like it's neither like it's neither a show that pretends none of that exists, nor a show that like focuses on it when what you really want to do is watch them like fight aliens. It is very much on the side of telling the story, getting into the heads of people, seeing how they change, but it's also really just interested. Like one of the main themes is like what makes a person a person.
Mhm.
So getting into that kind of philosophical focus. Um, so if that's interesting to you too. Also, everybody I know who's watched it likes it. So
Yeah,
I
it
feel
really is
like that's kind of
universally
the best.
it is
Um,
sort of feel like it's universally beloved.
yeah,
But it's funny though, because like I also felt like the intergroup soap opera dynamics between the characters are like a nice like it's not central, but it's part of the emotional investment in the series that makes it feel so diverse as well. Because there's multiple kinds of polyamorous queer relationships in the show.
it's also
And
a very very much an everybody here is queer show, but in a non annoying way.
yeah, yeah.
And in a
And
way that
I
really
yeah.
suggests that like in the future people will conceive of gender and sexuality and relationships differently than they do now.
Mhm.
And it's in a time when a lot of science fiction media attempts to do that and ends up just sort of doubling down on like
Mhm.
parts of culture that maybe aren't aren't as healthy as we wish they would be. This is one that really commits to like a perception of how else culturally humans might change their approach toward it.
One thing I really respect too is that in this season, most of the main characters, other than Murderbot, are people who are not normally dealing with violent situations. And often shows that have that can kind of they can kind of make fun of their characters in a way that feels condescending to you, the viewer, who also are presumably probably somebody who is not regularly in violent situations, or they also like pump you up in a way that it's like feels delusional. I think this show does a great job of portraying what scientists and doctors would feel like in these sudden violent situations that we don't, tend to find ourselves in, and knock on wood, continue not to find ourselves in, with empathy and humor. You know what I mean? Like, it has both of them.
Yeah, I don't want to get too
Um,
deep into this because it does get
mhm.
into some spoilers, but
Yeah.
keep in mind, of the lead cast, 3 are women who are scientists, and more than probably any other TV show or movie I've seen recently, they actually look like the science and engineering, like, college faculty that I work with in my job.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, but,
Hmm.
like, another thing is if you're, like, tired of women looking a certain way on TV, you will
Hmm.
find the way that women's faces and bodies look on this show very refreshing.
Yes. People are attractive, but in interesting, unique, non-generic ways,
Yes.
which we
And with a wide
deserve.
variety of gender presentations within the
Mm-hmm.
same gender, not just, like, there's also
Yeah.
quite a bit of gender diversity, but, like, just, um, yeah, like that treatment is something that I think most people would find refreshing.
And one of the big selling points, actually, I did when I was trying to get Anthony, who was my guest, to talk about Andor, Anthony from Get Free, was like, we also have a series that involves people from a non-dystopian planet. And there are, and like, I'm so fascinated by their world. Like, I am so, like, we don't get a ton about their worlds, but I am so excited about seeing and hearing the non-dystopian future world that some of these folks are from.
Yeah.
Like, that feels really creative to me to have a series go there.
Yeah, and that's one where, like, so I know that we're gonna to move on to the full of
Hmm.
spoilers portion in a minute, but one of the things I am not going to do to the best of my ability is spoil any books beyond All Systems Red. And Ilana, you have talked with me in advance and mentioned
Yeah.
now this sort of utopia within a dystopia structure, and I am just zipping it.
Yeah. 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 Well, with that, we're going to shift to full spoilers. So go watch the full series. There aren't that many episodes. They're packed. You will make it through. You could totally marathon this, if you haven't seen the show yet, come back. I'll see you tomorrow, right?
Yeah, I literally binged the whole thing today. And I also just reread All Systems Red, which again is the first book in the series. I have so another thing to know that I think will make some people happy is Reactor Magazine, which is like the publisher Tor's online magazine. The night that the finale dropped, which was Thursday, um, they premiered a short story by Martha Wells set in the universe, which is not what you should start with because it refers to characters and settings and stuff that will make no sense to you. But that just went up, and we'll put the link in the show notes. And in the course of finding that, I discovered that there were 2 other short stories, one in Reactor and one in Wired, that I had not read. So I have read everything except those stories. I just reread All Systems Red, and to the best of my ability, I will spoil the heck out of the show. I will spoil the heck out of All Systems Red because there's basically nothing to spoil in there that the show itself doesn't spoil. And I will do my best not to give anything away from books 2 and beyond.
And with that, we are going into full spoiler mode. I guess let's kick off because our first bullet is here is like, let's go talk about how queer this show is.
So we're assuming that, like, anybody who has not turned it off at this point has watched the show. It is very, very, very clear, like, from the first 5 minutes of the first episode, that Murderbot is agender and not only non-binary, but, like, there's not, like, a spectrum or a toggle here, like, just outside of the typical gender schema, is asexual, aromantic, and sex repulsed. Fans of both the books and the show who are parts of all of the all or any of these overlapping communities are really excited about it. So, why do you think people have really latched on to Murderbot as like a representative of their queer identities?
People are excited to see a character like this portrayed by someone who is doing like a really excellent, sensitive, funny, but like funny but not joke performance for this. And the fact that that the series, the series exists because Alexander Skarsgård like wanted to make this happen, right? Like he has this role because this is the show he wanted to make happen. Um, I think it's really cool to have someone like him in this role. I wouldn't want to have a cis actor playing a gender or non-binary human like Pinley in the show, right? But Murderbot's not a person. So Murderbot isn't like, you're not representing Murderbot like a person. And I think a lot of the time people have an idea that somebody has to be androgynous in a certain very narrow way in order to be considered non-binary or agender. And Murderbot is like, the actor playing Murderbot is just this like super handsome masculine guy. And that's fine.
Yeah, and what's interesting about that is you and I both agree that Skarsgård, who I looked it up, and the correct pronunciation of his last name is not Skarsgård, but I'm not even going to try it because it'll sound even worse. So we're going to stick with the Americanized version of it. But that a lot of people, when his casting was announced, were really hesitant about it, um, both among queer people and straight cis people. Um, and a lot of that came from like one of the things that I've seen people talk about is a lot of asexual and aromantic people often feel like they get treated as like less human because it's like, oh, you don't feel sexual desire, you don't feel sexual attraction, like you're missing some key component of human experience, and they feel dehumanized. So seeing this like cyborg character who's having those experiences and has that relationship with sex and sexuality becomes like sort of the sci-fi metaphor for what they experience in their own social interactions. Um, and, um, a lot of them that I've seen articulated that I felt like, "Okay, I don't agree with you, but I get what you're saying here," is like, they feel like by casting a very conventionally masculine cis white man in that role, it's kind of undermining that feeling of otherness. And like for me, my perspective on it is like if a corporate entity is mass producing humanoid, what they perceive as basically like humanoid equipment,
Mhm.
that the whole purpose of it is to be intimidating and look like it can protect you, they're gonna make them all kind of look like Alexander Skarsgård. Like that's
Yeah.
our sort of visual image of what a bodyguard looks like. And there's deep-seated gender problems with that, that both the show and the books are subtly critical of. And Skarsgård's appearance itself allows the show to be more critical of that because it it invites you to cringe every time somebody uses a he him pronoun for it.
Yeah. Yeah. It cringes, we cringe. What a great way to teach people that you don't have to look a certain way to have a certain gender, right? I think it's great to have this. And we desperately need more roles for non binary and agender actors. But like, to me, like, it matters that Murderbot isn't a person. You know what I mean? In the same way that like it
Yeah.
would be with Pinley. So like Pinley is like a non-binary actor, non-binary character. That's representation and hiring in. With Murderbot, one, the show wouldn't exist if Skarsgård wasn't the lead character in it because this is how the show got made. And it's like a good reminder to people that you can look like this and be a gender. and have its pronouns. And
And to note, Pin Lee in the books, and I had forgotten this until I
mhm,
reread. Um, so Pin Lee is a combination of two characters from the books, and both of them use she/her.
hmm,
So the character was both merged and then reimagined as non-binary, and then they hired a non-binary actor, Sabrina Wu, to play that role. And Sabrina Wu looks very much like sort of the stereotype of non-binary people, because one of the conversations I've gotten into was saying, yeah, I would have loved to see a non-binary actor play the role. How about someone like Bilal Baig or Caldwell Titty Q, who a lot of people know as Bob the Drag Queen?
hmm,
And people are like, that's not what I meant. And I'm like, both of those actors are non-binary. And they're the
yeah,
only two that I could think of like offhand that like with a lot of personal training might have the physicality to carry off that role.
the voice in your head that tells you that certain people have to be a certain way is just wrong. You know?
Yeah. And it's like I heard, well-meaning people say things like, "Oh, it should have been like Tilda Swinton or something," and I'm like, "That is so wrong on so many levels." First of all, that's a cis woman. Second of all, she's like
Yes.
in her 60s.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, it just sort of there's a sort of doubling down on, like, what people perceive as, like, a non-binary body, and
Hmm.
that's not like, I know a lot of non-binary people with a lot of different gender presentations,
Yes.
and I also know as somebody who comes pretty close to the stereotype in my everyday presentation, that any way in which I, deviate from that, and I'm sure that's something that you've experienced too, Alana,
Hmm.
is like, that gets policed, and it's often in that well-meaning, "But don't you want to do XYZ?" And it's like, "No. No, no, I did this on purpose. I've thought about this."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and Skarsgård's performance is so good. Like he's great in this. Something I thought was that Shanti Collins did some really good write-ups of the episodes for Decider. And one of the things he drew out that I hadn't really put to was the very slight accent that he has, because he's speaking in his natural accent, which is he's from Sweden, is like this little flavor of just slightly off of what the other characters who all sound like native English speakers sound like, and it gives this sort of a bit of a remove for him to some of the other people there, um, and that it just sort of feels like a little bit off kilter from the pace of the other people who either have British or American accents. You know?
Although I will note, that is true of everybody except Noma Dumezwini, who plays Mensa, um, is a native English speaker. Her bio is, like, fascinating. She came to England as a refugee in childhood,
Oh,
so English is her first language, but she's from, like, Swaziland in South Africa.
oh, okay, interesting. So she's
And every once in a
right.
while, if you do that actually does come through just a little bit in the way she speaks.
Mm. But yeah, I just thought that like that bit of that little bit of accent that he brings to it, I thought was a really cool offshoot of his casting in this. I haven't seen him in that many things, but this makes me want to. He
Yeah.
did such a great performance.
He's one of those, who's Skarsgård? Yeah,
Hmm.
like, I watched True Blood back in the day, so,
Hmm.
like, I've seen all of him. Um, but yeah,
Mm.
it's he seems to be very, very selective and thoughtful about the roles he chooses, and to, avoid roles that, um that don't let him act, if that makes sense. Like, he
Yeah,
always wants to
yeah,
be doing something and building a character, and his ability to, like, just he has incredible micro expressions, like,
yes,
there's so much going on in his face.
yeah. That's exactly it. That's
Yeah.
exactly it. And who knew this? Like, I mean, maybe he's done all the humor stuff, but I really don't know. But it's good. Like, who knew he was so good at the humor piece? But like, it's such the voice of Murderbot is such a unique perspective, and like it would be a completely different show with a different performer in that role. And that's the other thing I find about people trying to like dreamcast other people, and it would not be the same show without this particular performance.
Yeah. Certainly, there's several people in the main cast that I've never really seen in anything before,
I don't think I
but
knew
the
anybody other than David. Um,
Desmalkian.
yeah,
Yeah,
David Osmalkian.
I'd seen in a couple. He was in. I can never remember which one is Suicide Squad and which one
Suicide
is.
Squad. He was in the good Suicide Squad.
Oh yes, yes. And he had like 1.5 scenes in Oppenheimer and stole them. Like
Mm,
he just like he's been a character actor forever, but has recently had some more high profile
hmm.
roles. It's like he's finally old enough that people want to use him for like the kind of look and presence he has, and that's really cool. Good for him.
He's so good. I mean, everybody in the show is so good, and I'm so excited about all these actors I hadn't seen before in this now. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
If all four of the actors I was familiar with um are comic actors who have played prominent comic roles in the past. Sabrina Wu is a
Mm,
stand-up comedian. Like this is definitely, even though the dramatic stakes are really high, it's fundamentally a half-hour comedy.
yeah, yeah. Oh, now I want to go check out I want to go check out their stand up. That's like super fucking cool.
They're really funny. Yeah, and they were in there was like one of those like road trip comedies that they were in that I saw,
Mm,
and it was one of those where like script just okay, actors like incredibly funny.
that is very
Um,
common among road
yes,
comedies.
it was very much. It was like Asian American Girls Trip.
Okay, okay.
And then as long as we're on this, Noma Dumesvini, whose
Mhm.
name I'm probably butchering every single time, and I'm so sorry. Um, like Doctor Who fans will recognize her. Only Murders in the Building fans will recognize her. It was actually I couldn't believe she was in as few episodes as she was in. And I and three other people will remember her as a series regular on Made for Love, a show nobody saw but me, which you should also watch. Um, but yeah, so it's a lot of like character actors whose faces you'll recognize,
And
and a few you probably
actually, I
won't.
totally forgot Dr. Bardwaj. I know her from Reservation Dogs.
Oh, which is a show I couldn't get into. So yeah,
Yeah,
um,
so I've seen her doing dramedy before with a very different character, but like dramedy. Like this is definitely, she's an actor who can do a good dramedy.
and then some much more recognizable faces appear in Sanctuary Moon.
Yes. Yeah, that is a kind of an interesting way to handle it too. Like to have the big celebrities be guest stars of the show within the show.
Yes, and from what I've read, it was basically Skarsgård just calling all his buddies up.
Yeah. Calling all your random
But
friends.
yeah, but it also is a nice commentary on like you put the movie stars into the fake show.
Mm, yeah.
We were talking about gender and especially Murderbot's gender and sexuality, which I really want to stress from what um, especially people on the asexual and aromantic spectrums have told me. Like, it's not the absence of a sexuality; it's a sexual identity and an experience of sexuality in its own right. That like responding to sex with repulsion like Murderbot does is an experience of sexuality in itself. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially as like somebody who watches Sanctuary Moon, which is full of like stupid romance. Like it's not something that is alien to its life. It's a way of relating to the world.
Yeah, that's always been fascinating to me because there's definitely like a lot of ace people enjoy a lot of extremely unace media.
Yeah.
Um, I don't understand it, but I believe them.
Mhm.
I I try to think of if there's media that's about stuff that's just not like for me that I love anyway, and it's like not really, but I get how that's a thing. And I think that just generally like anybody watching this show is likely to be a fan of a show or some show they have a deep connection with. And this is something that we share with Murderbot. Like people have their comfort shows, and so does Murderbot. Um,
Yeah. I actually the thing that it really reminded me of was the pink opaque in I Saw the TV Glow, as like
hmm.
being fully aware that like something is flawed, but insisting that it's great because it has such personal meaning to you.
Yeah, no, totally. As a music fan and as a comic fan, these are definitely things that we explain to people.
Yeah.
Um,
As a person who is chasing the Love Island finale with the premiere of Big Brother, like it comes in many forms.
yeah, I just explained too. We were talking about an online music posting thing that we're doing now on Blue Sky. Folks, come check out All Sorts. And somebody asked us, they were like, I'm sorry, in this case, I don't, this asked me, I'm not going to make Sarah be part of this. Like, is Kiss good? And I was like, well, Kiss is brilliant at being dumb. So if you're ready to enjoy a band that is brilliant at being dumb, then we can definitely talk about Kiss. They're geniuses at it. It's like, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
As someone with with like the most pretentious musical taste, like I feel like I'm on the wrong side of this conversation. So
exactly. So it's fine.
yeah.
But that's what I mean. Is like, and
Yeah.
the thing is, like, we see clips of Sanctuary Moon, and I'm fascinated by Sanctuary Moon. Like, it's got really interesting, vivid art direction, and it obviously has a lot of Star Trek feel to it. It feels like a Star Trekky show. Um, I would like more of that.
Yeah. Um and it's like it's Star Trek at its cheesiest moments, whereas I feel like Murderbot, the show itself, feels a lot more like Star Trek at its most. We are really doubling down on this post-humanism thing, really getting into the social anthropological sci-fi while still letting everybody, fight monsters and robots kind of
Mm,
mode that Star Trek gets into. So it goes into the various angles of how people enjoy and interpret and experience sci-fi. And if you interpret it in the ways that tend to annoy us on the left, you are going to be annoyed by this show because it is purposely not letting you get away with that kind of reading. Like, if you're just in it to watch things blow up, you're going to have to sit through a lot of conversations.
yes, yes, and like, I mean, I think that there's an interesting debate in this show on screen about the value of the series as camp or not. Like, I love the moments when Murderbot has to defend its fandom to other people, and other people recognize it or don't.
Yeah. And I love that, like, Rati is, like, also really into it.
Yes,
That,
Rachi's really
like,
into everything.
yeah,
Like, I feel like everybody watches the show. Me, all right. I feel like everybody probably watches the show and it's like, oh my god, I fucking hate Rati. And I watch the show, I'm like, Rati, yeah, I understand you. Like,
I
we
don't know
understand you.
anybody who dislikes Rati.
Oh, good. I'm glad. I worry sometimes that it feels sometimes that characters who are very friendly, people read some of their frustrations with extroverts into them and end up being weird about them. So I'm glad that people are supporting Rati.
I think it's a combination of, like, he's so awkwardly friendly
Mhm.
and that, like, and I think we'll get into, like, awkwardness a lot
Yeah.
because one of my, like, scrawled notes from my rewatch today was, like, awkwardness is what makes us human.
Mm.
Like, everybody on this show is awkward in their own very, like, just very real way where, and Rati is one of those, like, awkward extroverts where he just wants all everybody to love him, and so he tries to, like, make himself into the person that they would love and is very tired. But I think it's also that, like, of everybody, Rati is the one who most wants to see Murderbot as a person
Yes.
and is most enthusiastic about liking it.
Mhm.
That, like, he's such a cheerleader for Murderbot that it's hard to be all that mad at him.
But I think actually no, this might be part of my less concern is that Murderbot doesn't want that for so long, and so it's a site of additional awkwardness and tension with our
Right.
protagonist. That like Rati has always been team Murderbot's people like us, and Murderbot's like I'm not though. Okay, and that's sort of like an internal conflict with them in a way.
Right. No, that makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah, and it's in such contrast to Lee Beebe, who I want to note is a character who was invented for the TV show. There
Hmm.
is no equivalent to her in any of the books, and especially not in All Systems Red. That, like, she's her sort of like really intrusive boundary pushing in interest in Murderbot is in such contrast to Rati, who just genuinely likes everybody.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that creating Labibi was such a smart move. Because it speaks directly to the points of confusion that a viewer might have, and also, builds tension in a way that pays off.
Yeah, the show more than the books really needed a way to non-didactically show the extent of Murderbot's discomfort and repulsion. Um and just needed that person in there because not only is she the one who completely disregards Murderbot's like very clear delineation, like that it is not somebody who should be sexualized in any way,
And that
and
and that
like
it's not a
repeat
he.
yeah, and that it's not a he, and that, like, you know, just because you're attracted to it, like, that's not its problem, that's a you problem.
Mhm,
But also, um, like, looking at her so the entire, um, preservation, um, group, which is Press Ox, so I'll probably refer to them as that, all of them are people of color, and all 3 of the women, like, they're not wearing beauty makeup, they either have short hair or, like, just very simple tied back hair, and
mhm,
then Lee Beebe comes in and she's got, like, very visible eyeliner, she's very, like, performatively femme, and she's also white. Like,
mhm.
and that becomes very visible because all the other humans that we're getting attached to are not like that, but usually all the women on screen look like her.
Yeah, yeah.
And then Anna Kunkel, who is in a bunch of stuff, but like she's best known probably for Pen 15, which is a show that is not for me, but she's great in. Um, like she's very aware of that kind of like she's very conscious of what she's doing in that role.
Yeah, it's a great performance. It's, like, so painful and, like, in a deliberate way so many times. But she also is, the one window we really have. Well, Dr. Garathan is so reserved about talking about his past and his trauma that for a while she is sort of the best insight we have into like the world of people who live on corporate planets and how like shitty everything is, and that she doesn't understand or see it that way. This is just the way the world is for them. That's that.
Yeah. And because Garathan, not only is he very reserved, and from what we eventually see of his backstory, again, all of which is like there's a lot of things that are hinted at in the books, but that it goes way deeper into way sooner.
Mm.
Um, that like he was an outsider within the corporation rim, and then the corporation rim screwed him over. So he's got a very different perspective on it than most people who live within that culture.
Hmm. So yeah, I thought it was a really smart inclusion and wrench in the cast in a way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, maybe the best endorsement for the invention of Lee Beebe is the number of people I've talked to who are either non-binary or on the ace-aro spectrum who have said like, yeah, the way she's acting is so reflective of the worst things people do to me.
Mm. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
it's like those everyday microaggressions
Hmm, hmm, hmm.
and occasionally just aggression.
um, let's talk about Dr. Mensa and how much both we and everybody on the show loves Dr. Mensa.
I mean, like, so continuing my lifelong pursuit of just deeply attaching myself to a different character than everybody else. Like Mensa is the character that I watch and I'm like, oh God, that's me. Like not exactly, but like enough that it's like, yeah, that's kind of the way I approach leadership and stuff.
Mm.
Um including the ways that it like constantly backfires on her. And I think that's part of the reason that people really like her is that she's so well-meaning and she's doing everything that we would like want a boss to do, and at the same time like it falls flat so often and
Well,
she's
I also
so
think it's just she's
yeah.
out of her element. Like I
Yeah.
suspect that in her world, which is like this non completely fucked up world, what she's doing works and makes sense. But in the world of Murderbot and the world of the corporation, those things don't work, and that's just not true there. Like,
Yeah. Any listeners who have read Beyond Book One are going, wait, and I'm like, okay, that's a spoiler, stop it. But yeah, like it's partially that she's out of her element, but she's also the person who everybody is saying, no, don't do it yourself. Let us help you. And she's like, nope, I'm going.
mm,
And I think that she has strong Captain Picard vibes
yeah,
in that respect. Like that she's
totally.
a very similar kind of leader. And of course, Captain Picard from Star Trek The Next Generation is one of those, like he's at the very least everybody's second favorite captain, you know?
I mean, it's a sort of leader that is leading with compassion, and everybody wants to be around them. Everybody in the show really respects them, and like they're very nurturing. Like I really do see the Picardness of
Yeah.
her in this. And it's also sort of interesting just also to be like, you know, the way that manifests itself between her and other characters is sort of complicated because like sometimes it feels like it's more familiar, sometimes it's more like one-sided romantic. um I think the manifesting itself in a few different ways, it's interesting to me as well.
Yeah. That she really does have these warm, individualized personal relationships. She's also got like a very complicated polycule and, you know, a bunch of kids that
I love
fight.
it. I love it. I love it so much that she comes from a very complicated polycule with a bunch of kids. And like we overhear her like talking about her family stuff that's like advanced level family stuff, talking about it at Murderbot, who's just like, I am so not equipped to like figure out if you had one partner and like a child, this would be bad enough. You're telling me about your multiple partners and multiple children. I cannot
There's a
deal.
point at which she's going on and on about her kids, and Murderbot just flat out it's like she gets moved down in the mix to like background noise, and it's just Murderbot saying, I don't know why they all want to talk about their offspring, but they do.
Mm-hmm.
Which as a child-free person, sometimes I have that feeling that I am asking about people's kids because they like talking about them, and I like it when people are happy.
But what was also a cool touch is that at one point, Dr. Mensa is talking about one of her kids. And this is a kid who uses they, them pronouns now, but, you know, didn't before. And Dr. Mensa corrects herself like briefly. She's like, and I don't remember what binary pronoun they used, but whatever binary pronoun it was, and then they're like, "Oh, right, sorry, they," and then keeps talking, and it was such a good example of like, yeah, you can make a mistake and you fix it and you keep going, and like you know what I mean? That's like modeling this like in a in a
And
in a
it
in a good way.
mirrors, I don't know if it's that episode, but it's like within one on either side, that it's that big scene when Murderbot and Garothin plug into each other to basically save Garothin's life.
Mhm.
Um, and after that point, Garothin establishes that Murderbot's pronouns are its, and nobody in the group misgenders Murderbot after that.
Yeah.
Like, there's some slips or just them not being sure, but after that, they are very consistent with Murderbot's pronouns. It's like Garothin literally had to go into Murderbot's head to, like, get that confirmation.
Yeah, because it's certainly you could think like, "Oh, we're only using it's because that's dehumanizing." And then it's interesting, actually, there's a critic I know who that one of this critic's first reviews used they them for Murderbot, which would be an understandable thing to assume. And then one of the readers was like, "Actually, Murderbot really does use it's. That's its pronouns." And the critic was like, "Oh, you're right. Okay, let me fix that." You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's intentionally disconcerting, and it's a
Yes.
way, um and so again, something articulated very directly in the books, but I think it comes across very well in the show, is that using is one of Murderbot's ways of resisting people seeing it as something
As a
it's
person.
not and does not
Yeah.
wanna be mistaken for.
Yeah, it's humans are like, "Oh my god, that's so dehumanizing," and Murderbot's like, "Yeah, I'm not a human. Um, humans are gross."
Yeah, humans are gross and smelly and wet and like
So disgusting, smelly, and wet.
yeah. Yeah. So yeah, so but that's really important and I feel like that's a great sci-fi way of talking about the way intentionally chosen pronouns are a response to how people have treated you before
Mm,
you
mm,
landed on those pronouns and I am on the record as somebody who finds neopronouns mostly annoying to use. And at the same time, if somebody tells me that those are their pronouns, I am going to do everything I can to get those pronouns right because my opinion is not needed here
yeah, yeah. Nobody
because
asked you.
something in their life has led them to feel those are the pronouns for them.
Yeah, yeah. I kinda feel like I'm waiting for the right new pronoun to come along, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like there's so many layers happening with the show, so bravo there. Um And it's just so cool to have an older Black woman be in this kind of position with the cast, and, like, everybody would do anything for her.
Yeah.
One thing that I am obsessed with is there's so many times when our characters are interfacing with the corporation are always trying to correct them and explain how Murderbot is just property and not a person. And Murderbot, of course, is like, I'm not a person, but Murderbot also wants to be free and is an individual, right? Um, Plenty of beings in the world are not people and also are individuals. There's this look that's on the actors' faces who play the corporation side characters when they remind our heroes of Murderbot's status, where you can tell that the corporation side characters are aware that they are treating an individual like property and that that's bad. And they say it, it's such a subtle note in the acting that I don't even know how you direct for it. But it's sort of like people have this misconception that in the past, you know, white people who enslaved others, quote unquote, didn't know any better. Well, actually, no, there were people who were alive in that time who knew that was wrong Columbus was considered a monster by many, many people. Like, not a fringe group of people, but many people in Columbus's time were like, oh my God, that guy's a fucking monster. People will pretend that something that is monstrous and unacceptable was just the way things were. Plenty of people know it's wrong. And like, I think there's something subtle with the performances and the direction that we're seeing of the corporate characters, where they have this, it's almost like the smug satisfaction in reminding you, oh, well, you know, Sec Unit is just equipment. And it's like it's vice signaling almost. Like they had a pleasure in being able to say this terrible thing that they know is wrong. Do you know what
And
I
there's
mean?
all sorts of apparatus in place in the culture of the corporation rim that, and the biggest one is this idea that um sec units frequently go rogue, and that when they go rogue, they are violent. And eventually, what we learn is that pretty much this whole situation was a setup to create a tragedy in which a sec unit went rogue and killed a bunch of people, um, in order to uphold that cultural fiction to justify how sec units and other classes of similar bots are treated. And also, really, as the show implies in really thoughtful ways, to to justify the system of human indenture
Mm-hmm.
that it shows in various ways, and to justify, and again, the books get into this a little more, the sort of marginalizing and casting suspicion on augmented humans like Garathan, that
Mm-hmm.
like they need to create this idea that like if we don't control them, they'll kill everybody in order to justify treating them as equipment. The idea that whenever historically there have been, you know, there have been atrocities like chattel slavery and, genocide and mass relocation and things like that, that there are, whenever there's like written material to be archived, somebody has found somebody writing about how mad they are that this injustice exists,
Mm-hmm.
and that we very frequently, if not always, have evidence of people refusing to participate in it or undermining it or working to change it.
Yep.
That
And
like
mhm. But
that there's always,
yeah.
yeah, that there's always somebody out there that sees injustice and is trying to change it, even when the dominant culture is saying, well, that's the way things are,
Mm-hmm.
because clearly this group of people is inferior.
But do you see it like then in the performance, like I'm talking about, like under the surface, like this sort of like perverse joy they seem to get by verbalizing it?
Oh yeah,
Okay, cool.
absolutely.
Because I'm obsessed with that. Like that's actually one of my favorite fucking things about the series is that touch in those interactions.
Yeah.
Um,
But
yeah.
even like the Prezox group, like just because they are clearly like, it's clear that everybody except Garathan has like never been this close to a sec unit before, and
Mm-hmm.
like their only experiences of sec units are basically from TV. And they're all talking sort of gleefully about that one time in that one show when the sec unit went rogue.
Mm-hmm.
Like like it's a fun part of culture. It's like everybody knows this, and isn't that cool and exciting?
Yeah. Yeah. And they are really insensitive about it, even though they're not ill intended.
Right. Oh, that there's this cultural presumption that going rogue means, you know, lashing out in violence. And the irony is, and I think Garathan pretty much flat out says it, that like we assume that like rogue means, turns on all the arm guns, when in reality, we're seeing a rogue sec unit right now, and all it wants to do is watch television. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it does not want to hurt anybody, it wants to be left alone. And like, my perception of it is, yeah, like that's true of so many people. Like, that's so true. That, and like, I can think of a number of minoritized groups in like our culture that it's like, oh, if we don't control them, they'll be violent. And it's like, no, I like work with people, the people you're describing, and most of them literally just want to watch their shows or whatever
Mhm.
equivalent. Like they literally just want to do the things they enjoy that make them happy and be left alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like the thing that's actually coming to mind for me is for listeners who do not know my entire biography, I live in Chicago, and Chicago has a thing that is being framed as a problem where hundreds of Black teenagers from under-resourced and isolated communities will come up to the downtown area, and sometimes these days are planned and sometimes they're just sort of communicated via social media. Um, and you'll just see large groups of teenagers hanging around downtown. And what would happen is the vast majority of those kids would just like buy fries and hang out in Grant Park. And then like a small number of them would get into some sort of arrestable mischief, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And it has become this huge thing with like preventing teens from like being places unsupervised and like curfews and empowering police to just like grab kids for being
Kids in
kids of color
public.
and stuff.
Mhm.
And it's like I've, talked to people who are now college students who 5 years ago were those kids, and they're like, "Yeah, we just wanted to hang out and like get out of our boring, unsafe neighborhood and go somewhere that was like safer and fun and, do
Exactly
something."
like you and I did in ways that were not hyper policed. Like,
Right.
and we were like smoking cigarettes illegally and all that other shit and not getting arrested because we're white. Like, it's so sociopathic how this has been covered in the press. Absolutely. And I've seen it, even though I'm not like, I've seen the coverage of the stuff with Chicago, even though I'm not local. It's like disgusting. I think that's a really good parallel.
Hey, this is Sarah, and I just wanted to do a little clarification on the situation with incidents in Chicago where large numbers of teenagers, especially Black and brown teenagers, went to downtown Chicago in large numbers. I do want to note that there have been some shootings and other violence sometimes when these events occurred, and I don't mean to diminish those. However, gang violence that happened in highly visible places would probably still have happened in these children's home neighborhoods. It just wouldn't have been considered newsworthy, and the danger would be seen as less important because it wasn't affecting tourists, rich people, and white people. Actions against all kids moving freely in the city where they live, study, and work are based in racism and serve public image, not public safety. Um, my mom would point out that some measures, especially curfews, are an exception, as time limits on when children under 18 can be out unsupervised are standard throughout Chicagoland, do seem to increase children's safety, and can help public service agencies address problems like teens who are unhoused after being kicked out by family members. And I think it's actually a good segue into talking about how the show does handle race
Hmm.
and diversity of representation,
Yeah.
because it does have one of those casts that sometimes people complain about where it's like the box of Crayola skin tone crayons, but in this case I feel like it does actually work.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't, yeah, it felt, especially because it's a planet that we don't know what the dynamics there are. We don't know anything. Like, you know, it
Yeah.
seems perfectly reasonable to me. It feels like a weird thing to critique about this series. Like, is it bad? Do you need these people in this fictional world to all just be from one culture, or else it feels fake to you? Like, it's not. I mean,
Yeah. And it's also there's things like it's really cool to have 2 South Asian characters who look really different from each other. It's
hmm
really, one of my new hobby is, like, talking about this show with non-binary people. One of my friends who's really into this show, is Iranian and is so excited to see, David Dastmalchian, who is also Iranian, just on the screen in a role
hmm
that, like, isn't, you know, bound to his heritage, but where his heritage is still very visible.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so but, like, beyond the actor's cultural background, there's just a lot of interesting stuff about Garathan, who is easily the character who gets the most built onto his personality and his
Mhm.
backstory as compared to at least the first book. We do get more of him later, but we still, like I said, do not get as much of him as fast as we do
Mm.
on the show. And his addiction storyline definitely goes into a lot more depth. What do you think of how that's depicted and how that's used?
I really like how it explains his relationship with Dr. Mensah. It explains like why he's this, oh, he's like literally from the corporate hellscape world. No wonder he's miserable all the fucking time. He's super traumatized. It explains a lot about why the ways in which he's different from the other people in the core team. Which of course then later set him up to be somebody who really can connect with Murderbot for in some ways and in literal ways as well. But yeah.
Yeah. And that's actually one of the something that, I that is changed. And I think like it's one of those things that the way the books do it is great for the books and the way the show does it is great for the show
Mm.
is they take a very, very long time to warm up each other. By the end of All Systems Red, they are flat out still hate each other.
Oh,
Um
wow.
the two parallel sequences of them saving each other are um basically invented for the TV show.
Oh, interesting.
And that speech that Garathan gives is not in All Systems Red. So like that, but the building of that relationship towards the point where they start to care about each other is a significant change. I know a couple of people who were really annoyed about it.
Hmm.
Um, but for the most part,
Did
I
they
think
say
it's
why they were annoyed about it?
um it really just seemed to be like, I don't like it when it's not a word for word translation of what's on the page.
I see.
Yeah, it's like, I like the book. This is different. I'm not happy. Um, but again, this is not people like my friends that I have like talked about at length all think it was a good change. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, like I think that it's both because they really wanted to give David Dastmalchian a lot to do, and because he gives like my favorite performance on the show. Like,
He's
yay,
so
please
good.
do that.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm always concerned about addiction storylines.
Mm.
Like I'm always concerned that it's going to be like a PSA for Alcoholics Anonymous.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think it's doing that. I hope it
Nope.
continues to not do that. But like things like when he's injured and in excruciating pain and saying that and refusing painkillers, like that hits.
Yeah. Yeah. I wish I knew, and it's fine if we learn this later or not. Like, I'm curious to know more about the corporate intrigue that created the situation where he was set up to go spy on them before that whole thing. I'm really curious about that. But I love the idea of him being like, set up to go spy for evil and getting one over and Mensa helping him to free himself. And like, that's really beautiful.
Yeah. And the warmth of their relationship is really beautiful. And even though he does seem to have some romantic feelings for her, like it's not, it doesn't become the main story.
Yeah, he can live with that. He's not like you're not like, "Oh my god, this guy is a creepy stalker." You know what I mean? Like that feeling where there's a male character and they have an unrequited love for a female character and you're just like want them to not be dealing with each other because it's too painful. I think it works because he's not. he's not gross about it, and he's a little creepy about it, but private. You know what I mean? He doesn't make it her problem.
Yeah. It's a really nice illustration of my thing that it's always like, yes, you a human being can control yourself. You cannot control your feelings and like what your groin is doing sometimes, but you can make choices about how you interact with people. And if you know that that thing is never going to happen, you can respect that and deal with your feelings on your own time.
Yes, this is a great example of that.
You can always resist somebody. It is always possible. If you cannot resist somebody, that is a problem for you and your therapist.
Yep. And it's a relief to me to see a show like have somebody deal with unrequited feelings and have it not be gross.
Yeah. And several people
Yes.
in various ways, like acknowledging that some, some romantic and sexual attractions are very much mutual, and some you just have to work through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really thought that I was a little bit unsure of how I would feel about the story's handling of the. I'm unclear what kind of a polyamory agreement requires signing a ketubah in when just if you want to start also hooking up with an additional person. Uh, I'm like, okay, I guess this is like some part of their culture, some part of their system that they have there. And I was a little bit like, oh, if things go badly, is this going to feel like they're making fun of polyamorous people? And I was like, no, it doesn't feel that way. It just feels like it's particular people in a particular, quirks of their relationship. And because these are all good people trying their best, it's very humane, even though it has the still awkwardness of the dynamics between the three of them.
Yeah. I think that it's really thoughtful. This like what would a society where polyamory is fairly normative, like what kinds of emotional quagmires would people get into? And they are remarkably similar to like the actual poly people I know. Like same awkward conversations.
There's so much humor about polyamory that feels very insistent that this thing couldn't possibly work, and that the humor is in the ridiculousness of people's attempts to make it work. That makes me really mad because that's you, the creator, are short-sighted and bigoted if that's where you landed on this. So to actually get like polyamory humor right is impressive.
Yeah,
And
well, it keeps being it the reason it works is I think the reason we're saying a lot of other things work is that the joke is not the polyamory itself. The joke is polyamory leads to relationship dynamics that monogamy never dreamed of.
mm, and I just want to shout out for the scene where it's really clear that Pinley just wants to be with Arana, just wants to be with their wife, and Roddy is just like, "Hi, I'm here," and is just trying to like be game and supportive, but is not actually welcome in that moment because he's not the primary partner of either of them.
Right.
And he jumps in the massage train, and you could see Pinley is like, "Oh my god, please don't start." And then immediately is like, "Oh, he's really good at this. Fuck." But he only maintains giving Pinley an excellent massage for like a minute and a half before he jumps down and sits in front of the line of the massage chain. Oh no, I'm sorry. He's giving a Dr. Arana the massage. But the point is, the doctor is like, "Oh God, is he going to?" And then he does. And she's like, "Oh shit, he's really good at this."
Yeah.
And then, but he only maintains it for like a couple of minutes before he's like, "Okay, now I'm going to sit in the front of the train." And for some reason, that just made me crack up so hard to be like, he's doing a great job. Okay, now we're done. And I need you to massage me. This is my full stamina as a masseuse. And he proceeds to then receive a massage for longer than he gave, even though he was briefly very good at delivering it. To me, this is hilarious. Anyway.
Yeah. And that's like that is not what I thought you were going to say about the massage scene, which I think is great. Like
Please
my
tell me what
feeling,
you were going to say about it.
yeah. No, I just thought it was an interesting way of showing, like, in order to have these, like, serious feelings discussions, they have to pretend they're doing something, like, intimate. Um, and also, yeah, like, the awkwardness of him walking in on what was clearly a moment for two people. Um, and just my offhand love for the fact that the androgynous non-binary character is the hot trait of the group that everybody wants.
Mhm.
Like, for
Yeah.
me, and that's one of those, like, if that character is, like, the conventionally high femme person, like, that's awkward and sexist, but
Mhm.
non-binary people are so frequently desexualized
Yeah.
that, like, having Pinley take on that role in a way where it's not creepy or depersonalizing, but just everybody thinks they're hot. Like, to me, that's really welcome representation.
Yeah, no, Pin Lee is, and you get it because like Pin Lee is really funny, really down to earth, also has a lot of swagger and like has some really, really great hyper competency, but believable competency moments. So like you totally get why. And they make really cool like sash belt jewelry that I want. I think that's a great way to like have kind of a butch jewelry approach. Um,
Somebody could make a nice side hustle of, like, making those belts and selling them. People would wear
I
them.
know, they're so cool. So I think that the show is very convincing in getting the viewer to understand why and how that is for them. And
Yeah.
we also remember in the very first episode, Murderbot identifies the who's after who dynamic immediately, watching from the outside, and reports it all very matter of factly. And it's interesting sort of to see the humans take the full series to stumble around practically to figure out whether that's what the dynamic is.
Well, it reports it like it's watching a TV show.
Mhm.
It's like if you had to, like, run down who's dating who in, like, the current season of Grey's Anatomy, that's how you do it.
Oh, talk about the Grey's Anatomy parallel right now.
This is somebody on Tumblr came up with this idea, and I don't wanna take credit for it, so we'll put the link in the show notes. But the idea that, um, Sanctuary Moon is not sci-fi to Murderbot, that it's a contemporary soap opera, and the original poster, compared it to Days of Our Lives, and I, as a book reader, was like, "Oh, so, like, Murderbot's a Grey's Anatomy fan." Just that sort of, like, very comforting, very high drama, very repetitive, has been running for 7 billion years soap operas. Like, anybody who's really into a long runner knows why that's comforting. Because, like, the faces may change, but it's just the same thing over and over.
It's a very interesting reminder to me that that is what the show is that as they're experiencing it.
Yeah. One of the things that's interesting is that, like, so I don't know how deep that we as two very allistic people want to get into autistic representation and metaphors for autistic experience, but really what I know and from having some sort of deeper conversations with friends who are autistic, is that autistic people often really, really vibe with Murderbot and see a lot of themselves in it.
Yeah.
And of that, and also like the troubling, like, association of autistic people with being robotic or
Mhm.
or seeming not quite human. And also of that things like, well, they can be independent, but they need a guardian, which is a really common experience for several kinds of neurodivergent and neurologically disabled people. Um, and seeing how hard Murderbot chafes at that, but also Murderbot really liking who it is
Mhm.
as neurologically different from the people it interacts with.
Yeah, like Dr. Mensa is like, "Oh, I'll come and take care of you," and basically is like gonna make Murderbot one of her like 5,000 children, and Murderbot's like, "No, I'm gonna do my own thing," and you know that makes so much sense, and she respects that in the end. Like she's sad because she cares about Murderbot and wants to help, but she understands that, Murderbot is a grown Murderbot and can make its own choices.
The other character who is quite autistic coded, of course, is Garathan. And now that you're saying, oh, Mensa wants to like make Murderbot her next project, it's like, yeah, and Garathan
Mhm.
is clearly one of her prior projects.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. It seems really clear. But yeah, I was really wondering and concerned with how people would talk about Murderbot as autistic representation, given it being literally a robot and people
Yeah.
not liking that
My
parallel.
experience is the only people I have seen complaining about that are autistic people. And every autistic person I know who's into the books or the show is like, I am into this because, like, I see myself.
Cool. Well, happy for them. That's great.
Yeah. I mean, my joke is, and you and I are on the same page with this, that like I relate to Murderbot as a contractor who has to work with clients, um, who I
Yeah.
love and would protect with my life. But sometimes it's like, clearly you are seeing this from a different perspective than me, and I can tell you what I think, and you are just going to ignore me.
Oh my God. One more thing about Dr. Garathan again, which is I thought it was really cool that we got to see him reconnect with his former dealer, and his former dealer's trying to be like, making everything seem normal, as if you can just rewrite all that history away, and their discomfort and their interaction. I liked how that scene was acted between the two of them as well.
That scene was phenomenal, and with like the kid in the background,
Hmm.
and just the very minimalist way that that whole arc was shown, I thought was so successful. Where like I love it when a piece of visual media, whether it's TV or film or comics, gives you just enough visual information to figure out what a character is doing, and you have enough prior context to piece it together. But like it is letting you slowly deduce what Garathan has decided to do.
Yeah, yeah. And it's so kind and generous and heroic.
Yeah.
And yeah, like just straight up, like him straight up saying, like, "Oh, you probably assumed I was dead," is like, what an amazing moment. I mean, that relationship was probably more things happening than we even get to address there. But it was, yeah, it
And
felt
I feel
gratifying.
like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I have a hard time reading that scene as anything but two people who also did have, at the very least, an incredibly intense emotional relationship and probably a sexual relationship.
Yeah, there was like a I I can't say that I can speak to the experience of somebody dealing with their old dealer, but I can say that it had the vibe of somebody dealing with their ex. So that felt so I'm like, it may just be my own perspective as a person who has not dealt with addiction that this felt like dealing with an ex to me, but it really felt like dealing with an ex to me.
Yeah. I can
Um,
I can speak at least to like having to deal after the fact, like sometime afterward with an abusive ex specifically.
yeah.
Yeah, that
Okay.
it resonated with me on that.
It was such a good note to give Dr. Garathan, bringing in his past and making it relevant to where the story is at right then. You certainly see how the trauma and fucked up shit he had to deal with is part of how he's able to connect with Murderbot and helps him be a really powerful, useful character in the story.
So, one of the questions that I've seen come up with people who were book fans first is a sense that, like, the books, which come primarily out of the mind of one person with an anti capitalist bent, who publishes with, editors and stuff who support that view,
Mhm.
versus a TV show being made by two very large media companies, and whether you feel that that waters down the anti-capitalist bent. Because I've seen, and I tend to fall on the side of, does it water it down compared to the books? Yeah. Is it an unacceptable amount of watering down? No, it's fine. It's pretty good.
Yeah, it's like the only way this would exist. Like, that's the only way this exists. So,
Yeah. I mean, they let a lot through.
mm.
The company is still pretty villainous.
They're
They're
still
more
entirely
villainous in the books,
villainous.
but they're pretty
Wow.
villainous on the show.
Actually,
Yeah.
no. Okay, this is something where I think perhaps my non-book reading perspective can offer. The company is entirely villainous on the show. It is possible that there are some atrocities, or I guess I would just intuit from what you're saying, that there are some atrocities that the company does that we don't see in this show. It feels to me like those must have been cut for time rather than cut for censorship, because there's no redemption from the company. There's no, do you know what I mean? Like, they do nothing except be evil. They're not like prettified. Like, nobody's going to be like, well, the company's cool. It doesn't feel like we've been propagandized about how maybe the company is secretly okay.
Yeah, and I think that that's fair. Um, so, and I think we're getting real close to the Sarah Daniel Rasher talks about differences from the books 10 minutes.
Section. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, I think so. Um, if we're there and if you plan to read All Systems Red, like right now, I think bookshop.org still has a sale on. So, get on that. Go read it. Go to your public library and read it and encourage your library to get it. Like, do all of those things. Read the
Mm-hmm.
books. They're great. But so the biggest plot difference is that because the show is 10 episodes and each of those episodes has to have like a climactic excitement,
Mm-hmm.
um the plot has more waves of things happening than the book does. So basically, like everything from them going to the Delta hub to the end is basically all one sequence in the novel.
Mm.
And it is much more clearly orchestrated as company malfeasance being responsible for all of this happening.
I have to say, actually, I was a bit confused about all of that.
Yeah, it was in the show, it's much vaguer who is ultimately responsible, whether it's an actual rogue corporation, whether Grey Chris is independent from the company or not. And just to clarify, it is much clearer from the books that the company is a specific organization that for whatever reason, it like deep in its coding, Murderbot will not name by name. Like
Hmm.
it's purposely redacted to say the company, and saying anything else about that would be a spoiler for future books. But it is much clearer in the book that Grey Chris is some kind of contractor or subsidiary of the company that exists to remove accountability for what is effectively like a PR massacre.
Well, that's a thing in the real world for sure.
In the books, when the like the hub system fails, when the hub where they live, when the system fails, that system failure, it's like the company set up the hubs to fail.
Like, why are they trying to get people killed to do?
So that these two research hubs could be basically stormed and everybody in them could be killed.
To what effect?
And the purpose was, as far as one can tell, the purpose was to have it look like a bunch of sec units go rogue and murder everybody, and therefore we must continue to enslave sec units so this never happens again.
So the whole thing is like a burning of the Reichstag.
Yeah,
Situation.
exactly. You're right that it gets a little muddier the way they did it on the show, but really for me, Like, if they had tried to pace it the way the book is paced, it would not work. So, spreading it out the way they did and making the hierarchy of it a little muddier, I think works well for a TV show that's about to go into a second season. Like, I watched it and went, "Yeah, this is really cool. I really like this." And then went to the Discord where a bunch of people I know, some of whom are like good friends and some of them are just sort of people one knows on the internet. Um, and some people being like, "I do not like that they removed the company's agency from some of this."
Oh, I don't feel like they removed the company's agency. I just feel like it was less transparent what was happening in a way that felt like maybe it will be revealed more later or not, you know?
Yeah. And more is revealed later in subsequent books. So definitely now that we know the show's getting at least one more season, we are gonna see more of that, I'm sure.
Awesome.
So what do you think of all the violence? The graphic violence? Like, is it earned?
I mean,
Because it's pretty gross.
it's part of this, definitely delivered as part of the humor in a way that I think could feel awkward for some people. But I, for me, the only real impact is it meant that I didn't necessarily want to eat dinner while watching it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it didn't bother me. I mean,
Yeah. The part of it that I liked was how horrified everybody but Murderbot was by violence.
well, of course, and that's what I'm
And
saying. Like, I love it because it's like they're not used to this,
yeah.
you know?
And how when they were at all hurt, they were like, "Oh my god, this is the worst pain I've ever felt." Because it was, like,
Yeah,
they'd never been in that situation.
yeah. And it's like it's funny because it's like on the one hand, it's funny because it's like, oh my God, how ridiculous over the top their responses are. On the other hand, it's like, yeah, but that's how we would be, you know,
Yeah.
doctors and scientists and lawyers and stuff. And this is not our normal world. And I don't know, like I think it would have been easy for a show to strike the balance in the wrong way, but I like this.
Yeah. That gets to a broader and, like, I'm just gonna reiterate, if you plan to read All Systems Red and you do not wanna be spoiled for the differences, you should probably tune out now. Although I will reiterate that, like, you will not get plot spoilers that like, if you've seen the show, like, the book is pretty much the same story. Um, but, like, the important thing is that one of the reasons I think this is generally being regarded as a very successful adaptation, other than the fact that it was really that, like, Skarsgård, who loved the books, was executive producing it and was like, "No, you have to keep what's great about the books." And also that they did, in a very authentic way, keep Martha Wells just involved enough.
Hmm.
So they managed to, I feel like, keep the feel of the books and the spirit of the books, even as they changed a lot of the narrative and character components.
I would love to find some interviews, and I haven't looked at them with Skarsgård about this series, like what drew him to it and why he was so excited to make it happen. And it makes you think about how his father is plays a certain revolutionary leader on Andor. And so they're both sort of working through very political stories about science fiction stories right now.
Yeah. And I'm enjoying the extent to which we're seeing a lot of good TV and film genre works that are engaging politically in a very defiant way in a time when we need it. And I'm thinking too of, like, I have not seen Superman yet. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
thinking of people's enthusiasm for Sinners as an
Uh-huh.
example of that too.
Mm-hmm. That's so real. Yeah. No, it's definitely part of that trend. And I also have been telling people like this is a great way to come down off of your Andor high is to also sort of just jump into this series.
Right. Although I will know that, like, if you're coming from Andor to here, the tone is real
Very
different.
different. Yeah.
This is not Star Wars.
But I feel like it's necessary because of the humor. It's like a good break from that.
Yeah. In fact, my big, like, recommended if you and so the tone and style of the books reminds me so much of The Martian,
Mm.
that's similar, like, very wry first person, very close first person, um, and just all the little habitats on the weird world remind me of it too, and the ongoing competence kink and the celebration of people working together to not suck. Um
Well, that's the thing. I'm struggling with how to talk about the way the series portrays competence because there's so many great sort of like, yes, competence kink moments, but others in which the humor relies on people we like behaving incompetently, but in ways that don't feel demeaning. It's a difficult balance.
Yeah. Well, it's I don't think that they're ever incompetent. They're either out of their realm
I mean,
or
Rati
that
really
they
should have gone to his gun class on how to gun.
yeah, they should have not let Rati sleep through the gun class. Um, it's a lot of people doing things that aren't really their department. And it's even there's a moment where Bharadwaj looks at Mensa and says, like, I know that your academic specialty is related to this, but mine is exactly this. Like, it's not the
Yes, that was such
same.
a good moment. Yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
I've been there.
Oh,
Um,
yeah. I've been on both sides of that too.
yeah.
Um, like it does take a certain amount of like self self-assurance to say,
Awareness to
yes, you're right. I do not know as much about this as you do. Um, Especially when like me or Mensa, you deep down feel that you do know everything. Which I admit that I don't, but like, you know, personal failing. Um, and that's I do want to note that like of everybody that one of the things that is wonderful is you do get so much more of the supporting characters on the team. The one character that has changed the least from book to screen is Mensa. She's like the same
hmm,
person.
interesting.
It also, if you're like a Mass Effect game series person, you'll find a lot to love about the group dynamics in this
Hmm.
and this sort of like exploration of like what makes a person a person.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. It actually reminds me a bit. I only watched a small amount of Battlestar Galactica, but if there was one thing that I was very sure of, it was that Cylons are people and that they're not good people, that we and we should probably steer clear of them, but that they are people. And
yeah,
that the show kept postulating it as, are they? Aren't they? I'm like, well, they're functionally people, so they're people. So I think it's interesting with this show, it's like this is an independent thinking being that just has a different context that it comes from. It's not a person, but it's a unique individual perspective.
yeah. It's an intelligent, self-aware being that there's no way to perceive it as purely equipment. And it gets back to the statement I made earlier that it's like awkwardness, like one of the theses of this universe is awkwardness is part of what makes is like a defining feature of sentience that like we tend to equate artificial intelligences, whether they're androids or cyborgs or LLMs, which are not obviously like actually intelligent.
Hmm.
But like we tend to equate them with like a sort of a smooth perfection or like an awkwardness that comes from being like stiff. And Murderbot, when Murderbot is in its element, speaks very smoothly and very confidently. There's nothing robotic about it.
Mhm.
And but it's also sort of showing that there's something much more robotic about like the glibness of chat GBT that
Mm,
like that feels more fake to us now in a certain way and more artificial.
absolutely. Absolutely. Well said.
And that relates to something. my friend Elena noted, which is that a lot of the interactions feel much cringier on the screen than in the book, and it's because we're viewing them from outside, and that a lot
Mm.
of things like Murderbot either responds to other people like who knows why they do what they do without that like sympathetic embarrassment, or just doesn't know it should be embarrassed by things it does.
Yeah, yeah.
But when we see them from the outside, we're like, ooh, and that makes it sometimes a little more challenging to watch, but also gets that point through more clearly. I almost want to just like even end the conversation with I hope I wrote down this quote accurately, but at one point Garathan asks Murderbot what it's like to be it, and Murderbot says either this or something very close to this, which is I don't know what it's like to not be me, so I don't know what it's like to be me.
Mm. Yeah.
And that's really something that's key.
Well, I would just say that there's a couple things I'd love to have in a future season that I kind of think I'm
Mhm.
probably not going to get, but I will say anyway. I really do want to learn more about the world that our main characters this season are from because it's so rare to get insight into a non-dystopian future world. It feels like it's actually harder to do, and I want to see what they came up with. And I want to, I want to keep up with this cast, but I also really do respect the series' decision that to do what I certainly believe Murderbot would do, which was go off on its own.
And this is where I zip it a little bit, except to say that if the arc of the books continues to be followed, you will get some of those things.
Oh, good. Happy to hear it. Because I really was thinking I probably would not. So,
Yeah. I mean, as you might imagine, like these stories are about Murderbot, so you will see what happens to Murderbot next. And I don't think it's a huge spoiler knowing that like cast members have been hired, that you will get to see more of the Prezox team. And you will get to see more of how they live, and you will also get to see more of day-to-day life on more central parts of the corporation rim and port free commerce and stuff like that. Like
mm,
unless they go on a wild tangent that is extremely different from where the books go, you will get to see those things. And I don't want to
yay.
tell you any more than that.
Oh, that's great. You assured me of things. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Any last thoughts for for the episode, Sarah?
Just if you were on the fence about watching this, watch it. It's really fun. If you're at all on the fence about the books, you can read them before, you can read them after. Um, I am a words on a page person, but the people who have listened to the audiobooks have said they're great. It's like a you can't lose. It's a really fun universe to explore, and I hope people do it.
Fabulous. Where can our listeners keep up with you and your work?
So, social media wise, I am mostly on Blue Sky as rasher.bluesky.social. Um, Posting a lot about music and pictures of flowers and cats, but also sometimes about stuff like this. I have an inconsistently updated newsletter at therasherreport.ghost.io.
Mhm.
There's some hyphens in there. We'll put it in the show notes so the link is correct. I can probably be found on Discord if you look for me. Pretty much that's about it.
And I am on Blue Sky, hardcore. Really, folks, if you're looking for a social media platform that has what you loved about Twitter and the stuff that's gone bad isn't there, like leave the Nazi bar. You do not need to be at the Nazi bar in 2025. Come hang out on Blue Sky. We're talking about comics, we're talking about music, we're talking about science fiction, and also meaningful ways you can get involved in the fight against the evil empire that is ruining everyone's lives. And you can follow me there on Blue Sky at Levin. That's at Levin. Oh, and a thank you for by the way, thank you to everybody who listened to the podcasts when we were covering the election and volunteered and helped bring Zoran to this moment. We're on the precipice of winning the mayoral election for New York. So thanks to so many listeners for showing up on Making a Difference. You can follow me on Blue Sky at Levin. That's at Levin. And as we like to say, keep it geeky.